speak in English, so maybe it reaches out to wider audience. So we'll basically start this session called the current situation of the war in Syria. It's been more than 2 years since the Arab Spring arrived to Lara, sweeping Syria with the winds of change affecting the region. 2 days ago, the UN Commission's most recent report spoke of war crimes and crimes against humanity committed by both the Assad regime and the opposition. The UN figures stand around 70,000 deaths, but the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, independent and based in London, speaks of almost 95,000. All in all, it's a huge drama for many families. With new claims over the use of chemical weapons, the active involvement of foreign agents, the looming refugee crisis in neighboring countries, the opposition's lack of unity, there is a huge need to reassess the situation and react accordingly. As Nadim Shehadi was saying, I think the most important exercise is to understand better what is happening in order to address the question. So first and foremost, we will hear from our panelists today, Salam Kawakibi and Pedro Lopez Aguirrebengoa. Then we would like to hear from you in order to enrich the debate with questions, comments, and please introduce yourself before speaking. Briefly, Salam Kawakibi is a political scientist, deputy director and research director for the Arab Reform Initiative. He develops, coordinates, and follows up on ARI's research projects. He also coordinates the State of Reform in the Arab World report. He furthermore contributes to the intellectual discussions and development of ARI, also in the form of essays. He's president of the Association Initiative for a New Syria. He's also associate researcher at the CIDOB, Centro de Estudios y Documentación Internacionales de Barcelona, and member of the Consultative Council of Mediterranean Citizens Assembly, MCA. He teaches a master program on development and migration at Paris I University, and he was principal researcher at the Faculty of Political Science of the University of Amsterdam between 2009 and 2011, and also director of the Institut Français du Proche-Orient, IFPO, in Aleppo, Syria. So we'll give the floor first to Professor Kawakibi.
Thank you very much. First, I am sorry for my exotic English, but I will try to be extremely clear. I am glad to be with you, between you, and invited by the foundation, and also to be in the Casa Árabe, who is one of our members of the Arab Initiative Reform. We are a consortium of 16 Arab and Western centers, and Casa Árabe is one of our partners in Europe. First, I have a small remark on the introduction paper talking about conflict in Syria started on January 26. What I call, it's a question of definition, of course. For me, the revolution in Syria started in the 18th of March 2011 with the Daraa event. And the military conflict started in Syria in the end of September 2011. And what's mean 6 months after the beginning of the peaceful uprising. And it's not only the side of the revolution who talk about this date, it's mainly the government who talk about the date of the militarization of the conflict, the uprising, and it's Bashar al-Assad himself who was in talking about September as the beginning of the military confrontation. The problem with the Syrian event now, especially in Europe, that we don't have any knowledge on the Syrian society, on the Syrian economic issues. We know only that Syria is important in the geopolitics, that Syria is important for it's une force de nuisance, as we say in French, force of nuisance value, and also it's the neighborhood of Israel. For the Western, it's the most important things. From the beginning, to be very clear, everything concerning Syria it's considered by European and American only as a threat on the stability and security of Israel. If it's not a threat of the security and stability of Israel, it's not very important issue. And for that, they let the situation become as now 2 years and 3 months of killing, of bloodshed, of bombarding, of using of all the conventional and unconventional arms. I am a little bit cynically laughing when I heard about the red line, about the chemical weapons, because the 95,000 people who was killed, they was killed by the conventional weapons and not the chemical weapons. And I think the red line, it's not the life of Syrian people. The red line, it's the border of Syria. When Obama talk about red line, it's talking about if Syrians use the chemical weapon outside their border, it will be a red line. But inside, nobody care. It's the feeling of all the Syrians, the feeling that nobody care about their situation. And it's one of the explanation of the uprising and also of the increase of the radicalization inside the revolution. Our knowledge about Syria is based on myth, what I call the myth, Syrian myth. In Western country, we talk about first about the Alawi regime in Syria. It's a big mistake because the Syrian regime was never based on the confessional rules. He used all the confession, he used all the minority, and he tried to divide the society as all the force of occupation, but he's on the responsible of the Syrian people. But since 17, everything was done to divide the society, to transform the civil society on communitary society, and to push everybody to his community, to his tribal, to his region or family, without any citizenship feeling. And also, the Alawi, who are 20% of this population, was discriminated, especially by this regime, to push them to be more involved in the security apparatus and the military sector. If you visit the Alawi region, you found it's the poor region in Syria without any infrastructure, any investment. And it's the prison, if you look on the number of political prisoners, you found a big percentage of Alawi opponent because they was very involved in all the opposition movement since the 70s. Second myth, when we talk about the secular regime in Syria, it's very nice to say Bashar al-Assad and his regime are secular and they protect all the minority. As I explained about the minority, it's not the regime of a minority, it's a minority of the regime. And it's this minority of the regime composed by many different communities, especially by the majority of the Sunni in Syria who work closely with the regime. The secularism, since 1960, 1970, the date of the Hafez al-Assad coup d'etat, the number of mosques was built in Syria, it's more important than the number of the mosques was built in Syria since the beginning of the Islam. The number of the Quranic school was built in Syria to replace the cultural center in all the cities was very important, and they call this Quranic school Al-Asad Quranic school. And also, every conference about the secular thought, or every event with secular intellectual or leftist or even liberal, it was forbidden by the security, and all the religious activity was very developed, encouraged. And I know that very well because I organized, when I was director of French Institute, I used to organize debate with Nasser Hamid Abu Zaid, with Alain Roussillon, with many of the Arab Muslim moderated intellectual, Muhammad Arkoun and others, Muhammad Abd Jabiri, and all my conference was forbidden by the security. But when we go to the next door, the mosques next to my institute, all the obscure thought was diffused with the encouragement of this security, and only to occupy the people by the social Islam obscure thought, to push them out from any interest on the political life. Third myth, it's when we talk about Syrian regime as a resistance against Israel. We must know that since '74, no one shot from the border of Syria against Israel was done. And we must look on the experience of Lebanon, and the number of Palestinians was killed in the camp since Tal al-Zatar in '76, and after that in the work of camp in the 18th, after that the Yasser Arafat in Tripoli. And I think if we look statistically, we can find the number of the kills very more important than we think. And also the worst section of the torture and of the repression in the security service in Syria called Fara Palestine branch. People suffer in the Palestinian branch, and it's not it's not approved on the position of the Syrian. And last time when the Israeli bombarded the neighborhood of Damascus, they sent the day after a message to Assad to tell him it's not against your regime, it's only against the arm on destination to Hezbollah. And it was a very clear message. And from the beginning of the event, Rami Makhlouf, the cousin of Bashar Assad, he said to Wall Street Journal, the security of Israel depends on the stability of our regime. It was also a very clear message. The first myth, it's about the socialism, regime socialist. Since 1970, the regime started what I called anarchic liberalization and chaotic liberalization, and very good relation with all the entrepreneurs on the base of corruption, of building new state capitalism, and under Hafiz Assad. And with Bashar Assad, it's become friend capitalism. It's not even state capitalism, it's friend capitalism, the family and those who work with the family. We must know that 60% of the private sector in Syria, it's only owned by the cousin of the president. 60% of the private sector in Syria, banking, tourism, mobile phone, petrol sector, and this situation was also one of the reasons of the uprising, considering the level of the corruption and the level of the poverty in this society. I think I must be brief. It's okay. Concerning it's true when we talk about the division on the opposition. I agree with all the criticized against the opposition that they are divided. They cannot found platform, common platform. But when we know our Arab society who live under dictatorship since 5 decades at least, and we know that in those society without any space of expression, without any free media, without any political party, how you can wait from those people to become from day to day expert in political issue and to manage a negotiation, to produce a vision. Even with all those reasons, we have many projects who was developed by Syrian people from inside and from outside concerning the day after. You have one of those projects called The Day After for Syria, for a new Syria, and you have 130 pages of vision for the future on all the issue, talking about the economic issue, social issue, cultural issue, security sector reform, transitional justice, and even how to manage a constitutional commission to discuss about the future constitution. And you have also a difference between the ideological background of the opposition. You have those who come from Islamic background, you have those who come from leftist background, you have those who come from liberal background, and those people manage, even if it's very difficult and if you see in the media it's chaotic sometimes, they manage to work together. They managed to sign the chart of Cairo last year was signed by Muslim brother, by leftist, by the communist, by the liberal, and by the Arab nationalist. It was very clear on the nature of the state. It was very clear on the identity of the state. Democratic, civil state for all the Syrian citizens. And of course, with 2 years of daily bloodshed, 2 years of torture, 2 years of destruction, massive destruction, we have afraid, all of us, Muslim and non-Muslim, and secular and non-secular, and even the Muslim brother, they have afraid from the radicalization on the movement, and it's normal to see such phenomena because people don't find any help from anywhere. And when we talk about help, we hear also in the media that, as in the paper, the Syrian rebels receive different level of support from Turkey, the West, and the Arab Gulf country on the Persian Gulf, particularly Qatar. Believe me, it's really exaggerated. The support come in the media, support come in the meeting of Friend of Syria. After the end of the meeting, everyone come back to his office and nobody care about what's happening in the field. Those from you who are journalists or humanitarian actors who visit the north of Syria, they can see in their proper eyes the level of weapons in the hand of rebellion. It's very artisanal. It's very they manage to the main weapons come from the army himself, from the corruption or from the fighting, but also they receive machine gun and they receive what we call lance-roquettes, RPGs. It's nothing in front of T-72 tanks, and it's nothing in front of Sukhoi and the MiG-23. Only the radical movement, only what we call Jabhat Nusra, they have enough weapons, they have enough money to not only to have a good level of life, but to have resource, but also to distribute in the area when they are dominated. For 1,000 fighter from the Free Army, you have 100 machine gun. For 100 fighter from Jabhat Nusra, you have 1,000 machine gun. And talking about stopping arming the Free Army, it's a high level of hypocrisy because the Free Army don't receive any armed. The Jabhat Nusra continue to receive armed. And from where? It's not to me to ask. We must ask our Western friend because the arms don't come from the sky. They come from borders. And when they come from borders, we talk about Turkey. And Turkey, they cannot manage this issue without green light from their allies in the NATO. But for the future, let us be a little bit optimist and think that we will have a future. I think the Syrians are capable to manage their future. We don't need to be at this level of skepticism about their capacity in all the fields. In the health fields, now the Syrians show a great engagement. In the economic fields, they developed many projects. You need to look on the network and you see the hundred of papers, hundred of analyses about the future in all the issues. But when we call about the future, we need to stop the war. Now it's a war. It's not civil war. It's a war against civilian. We need to stop the war. And to stop the war, we need a political issue. I agree with all of you about the negotiation, about the dialogue, about the political issue. But it's without any sense if we talk about this issue only on the good word and on the good hope. Because now for Geneva II, the regime prepare a delegation of nonsense person, non-value person. Those persons who will represent the regime in Geneva, they cannot even order their driver to change the wheel. It's people who are not anymore, they was never powerful in Syria and they don't have any authority. And it's only to play with time because the regime believe himself supported at is through by Russian, by Iranian, till the end. And a new information now, the regime received some fighter from the Houthi, Yemeni Houthi, who are the Shia from Yemen, to fight on the Syrian land. Now Syria become a place, open space for a regional and international new Cold War. And the Syrians suffer and pay the high price with indifference and with very immature policy from the Western, and especially, and I say that because I am French citizen also, from the French diplomacy, because we have every day declaration, and the day after we have the declaration in the counter-sense, and we don't understand what they want from they don't know themselves what they want. And the American, they manage their relation with Russian on the back of the Syrian victims. And to understand a little bit, in my mind, the Russian position and the Iranian position. First, the Iranian position, the relation between Iran and Syria, it's not Catholic marriage, it's a pleasure marriage, and it can be cut every time when one of those, both sides decide, and its interest, it's not based on ideology, it's not based on the Shia dependence. And if you know in the theology, the difference between Shia and Alawi, it's a huge, and the Shia prefer to manage their relation with Sunni more than with Alawi because they consider the Alawi as traitor, and it's very different ideology and different religion. Also, the Russian don't have, it's a big mistake for all the Western media, they don't have military base in Syria. They have military facility in the Tartus port, and it's nothing with military base. the Russian bargaining on the Syrian issue. The Russians have many other interests than Syria. They know the Assad regime is end, but they want the high level price for that. And they told the opposition, they discussed with the opposition, they organized track 2 with the opposition, and they said, if you don't have force, équilibre de force, balance of power, don't come and don't ask us to negotiate with you. The day when you manage your capacity to have power balance, we can discuss. And for the moment, we believe that the Western country must pay what we ask for. They have energy issue, they have Central Asia issue, they have Georgia issue, they have many other issues than Syria. And Syria now pay the price of all the mistake of all the country, pay the price of the Libyan experience, pay the price of the Iraqi defeat, pay the price of the Afghanistan issue, and I think the negotiation will be a good solution, but it must be in parallel with force, power, balance of power, and not with Jabhat al-Nusra, but with the Free Army, who are composed by many of the Syrian military who make defect, and by many of the civilians who was involved in the demonstration in the beginning of the uprising, who was secular, who was, even those who are Islamists, they are very moderate Islamists. They believe on the Islam of Syria, who is very moderate Islam, very open Islam, and the Syrian used to live with other communities since 2000 year, and they don't need now to learn how to manage their life. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Salam Kawakibi, for deconstructing the myths and laying down elements for further discussion. Now let me introduce Ambassador Pedro Lopez Aguirrebengoa. He has been posted in several diplomatic missions, mainly in Arab and Muslim countries in the Mediterranean. He has also been ambassador to the Holy See, Greece, Egypt, Sudan, and he was Spain's first ambassador to Israel. He took part in the Madrid process to reactivate the Middle East peace process and the Barcelona process, which paved the way for today's Union for the Mediterranean. Ambassador Pedro, please.
Well, thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you very much for all that you said. I think it was very important for me because I know a little bit of the foreign aspects of Syria, but I recognize I don't know the internal aspects of Syria, at least for the past 10 years, because I have not been in Damascus. It's true that the last time I was in Damascus, I spent the whole night negotiating the paragraph of a joint agreement on the Middle East peace process. The same thing happened to me in other two Arab countries, one Baghdad and one Algeria. So I consider the three of them not only people that have been maintaining the Palestinian resistance, but with very tough positions, with very, very tough positions. So I'm going to have a look at the subject from the outside. It is the only look I can have right now. From the outside, I was pointing yesterday night in the evening, not with a lot of success, that I personally have the feeling that once again the international community has not been up to the level in this issue. I mean, we Western countries in general, but also Russia, and I would say everybody, takes care of their interests. Maybe we are democracies from the internal point of view, we are, most of us. But from the point of view of foreign policy, we don't apply democracy, we apply interests. I think this is very clear in the United States. This is very clear in most countries, not to mention in Israel. which is a democracy internally, at least for the Hebrew, subjects, not for the Arab origin subjects, but it's a democracy internally. Externally, you cannot say it's a democracy. And this, I think, is a thought that we have been paying a big price for this thought in most of our dealings with the Arab world. Not from now, I think, since at least the First World War. And a big of mistakes have been made with Syria at the beginning. These mistakes with Syria at the beginning created, after the Second World War, created a new independent Syria, but for 25 years, a succession of coup d'etat, a succession of violence, a succession of instability. I'm not blaming the Syrians for this. I think they inherited the situation that we Europeans created in the region. And this can be applied to most countries in the region. So I'm not trying to explain the fascist regime, which I don't like. I think it was a copy of fascist European regimes. That's at least what Michel Aflaq dreamed of. And it had an explanation. They had an explanation. They were nationalistic. They wanted to create this Arab Union, which did not exist because of the previous history. And they wanted to create it on a secular basis, because they thought that the big problem in the Arab world was the fragmentation, political, ethnical, and religious, mainly. So if you didn't overcome this fragmentation with some sort of new political thinking, then we know very well in what the two Ba'athist branches, the one in Syria and the one in Baghdad, derivated into. So I'm not going to defend that. I'm against Ba'athist regime. But I understand that it brought certain elements of stability in countries that had very difficult positions, like in Iraq. Well, you didn't have freedom, but at least you didn't have factional fights going on. So when coming back to the issue of Syria, I think that the issue of Syria has come at a moment, a delicate moment, where there is a fight going on by proxy in the Middle East between, very clearly, Iran and with Hezbollah and with the Damascus regime in the middle, and now less, but before a little bit more with Hamas in the south, to occupy this central region in the Middle East ideologically and politically, and fight Israel and fight the United States, which are the two bad boys of the picture. Then you have absolutely the contrary, Israel, which is trying to profit any opportunity to simply, as Shamir said once, continue to negotiate to the infinite with the Palestinians without wanting really a solution with the Palestinians, and at the same time trying to obtain, through the pressure of the United States, economic pressure and so on, this accommodation of the rest of the Arab world to the Israeli Shema for the region. This is the policy. I remember the speech of Condoleezza Rice in Cairo. I was there at the side of the speech, and I remember the speech by Obama in Cairo. What did we get since then concerning the Middle East from the United States? Really, what did we get? Something new with the Palestinians. The Kerry proposition is say, I give you money and you renounce to territory. Let's find a solution without a precondition, the negotiation, and let's work out. Now, going back to Syria. In Syria, my personal feeling is that if we had learned from the past big issues in the Middle East in these last years, even from Afghanistan and from Iraq and from many other things, we should have said, look, Syria is an internal issue within the Arab Spring. We should therefore back up this need of democracy, of new regime, of, let's say, a new opportunity, a new challenge that most of the Arab world is trying to follow up, some in the right way and some in the bad way, I have to say. And let's give, for once, let's give the Syrians a chance to arrange their own business with the help from outside, which is necessary, but without the intervention of outside. Outside interests, regional interests, or global interests. And I have the feeling that while going through the United Nations Security Council with the resolutions, with the Geneva paper of last year, with the new conference that they're programming, they try to follow a legal way, let's say, or a political way, by which to bring down violence and then set the basis for a transition, a political transition that would have all Syrians participating in it. But in the meantime, they have been allowing these regional interests to take hold in Syria little by little, through influence in the Syrian various groups, by providing arms, by profiting from the situation to take advantage. I was reading an article by well-known Israeli Josie Bailey. Now, Josie Bailey was saying a few days ago that, look, the situation we have right now is the same situation more or less that we had at the time of the invasion of Kuwait by Saddam Hussein. That is, we have the Gulf frightened by the situation, having to take whatever the United States says. So it's a good opportunity for the Israelis to try through the Kerry plan to force come back to eternal negotiations with the Palestinians, offering them some economic incentives so that they renounce to the political preconditions that we all know for a negotiation. And that seems to be one of the lines, political lines, that is trying to work out. But there are the others. Iran is working its own line. Russia, I think, is always with the will of Catalina the Great in their mind, have always wanted to come to the hot waters of the South, as Catalina the Great said. And they sense that there is a moment where the United States is more inclined to take care of Asia or other issues, and is not so keen about the Middle East. The other day I saw a poll in the United States, 68% against an American intervention in Syria, 68%, Gallup poll. So everybody is trying to profit from the situation, and this is what, personally, I don't agree, and I'm sad about it. I think that the big international power, first, those outside the problem, it is Western Europe, Russia, United States, who are the ones capable to do something, especially in the United Nations. They should isolate the problem of Syria in the sense of trying to convince everybody not to put their hands in it, regional hands or outside in it. Go on by creating a frame by which the Syrians can really work towards their future, freely, without constraints, and they will do a great job for humanity. The bad part of it is that I don't feel they will do it. Happily enough, we had so many experiences in the Middle East, and personally I had so many experiences that I don't believe anymore. I have to touch, like St. Thomas. If I don't touch peace, Now I don't believe that they will be capable of carrying out this exercise. But I hope that people like us who are around this table, who try to discuss in a civilized way about such a hard problem, such a tragedy for you, also tragedy for us, that we will be able at least to sum up our voices with those who really want to give peace a chance and not to play with peace. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Ambassador Lopez Aguirrebengoa. We'd like to open the floor now to your comments and questions. Have about 15 minutes. And whoever wants to ask a question, make a comment, please introduce yourself beforehand. Yes, please, Ambassador, please introduce Ambassador of Algeria.
Todavía no. Sí, gracias. Good morning, gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for me, speaking personally, to come here in order to learn from the Syrian civil society, which is here, to learn from the previous ambassadors. Aunque está jubilado, me enriquece mucho lo que nos dice, embajador. The ambassadors are absolutely a source of very good information and element of evaluation for me. This is why I'd like to share with him some of the assessments he made. First of all, over democracy, over the U.S., the position of Western world and the Arab world in view of democracy. I'd like just to recall that it's been just a couple of years that we've been hearing about democracy in the Arab world. And we should ask why. Because 10 years ago, 15 years ago, as you all know, nobody was in the Western world even pronouncing the word democracy. It's a new thing, a new and rather weird thing, isn't it? Without pretense, I have an answer for that. The Western world did not speak before of democracy in the Arab world because it was not thinking, it was not meaning democracy. The only US and Western strategy over the last 50 years for the Arab world was to freeze the geopolitical situation because of the situation and because of the Arab-Israeli conflict, because of the interest of national security for the Western countries, for the US, they decided to freeze us, okay? And this is a slight message for the Arab civil society. It's not only the regime's fault, okay? The regimes were new, were just born in the 50s, in the 60s, 70s, etc. And I'm talking of my own country, for example. But as a matter of fact, they decided within a world, what I call a world strategy, to freeze the situation in the world, in the Arab world, and in the also Islamic world, if I can say so, because it's very difficult to make straight difference between what is Islamic, what is Arabic, what is nothing. This is the first thing. From distance, I'd like to get to the situation of what we call the Arab Spring. We all know that the Arab Spring was prepared by the internal evolution of the various Arab societies. It did not come just like this from a gift of God. I don't believe in that. There was a sociological and political evolution that has generated this situation in various countries, in which I see two categories. A category of first countries, countries that have the capacity of reforming themselves. The other one, the countries that do not have either the intelligence or the capacity, internal capacity of reforming, and we are now talking of the case of Syria, unfortunately. Speaking about what we could foresee as prospect regarding Syria, because we have to remain positive, and we have to be constructive, beyond the fact that what we see is absolutely devastating and negative. I think that we should all, governments, society, civil society, various institutions, work very strongly in order to support the initiative of the Ambassador Lakhdar Brahimi and the United Nations. This is the last chance. When we here in the Arab world, in the international community, speak and say that if we don't get a solution, the militarization of the situation would mean the end of the Syrian state. It's not just a figure of spirit. This is a reality, unfortunately. This is why we should do our utmost in order to avoid the situation, in order to get political settlement. Given the fact that any political settlement, it's not generally the ideal of what we could think. In a negotiation, you have to give, you have to obtain, you have to grab sometimes. In the case of Syria, it seems to me that the best way would be that we would implement, through a very generous approach, the framework of Geneva. Geneva gives us a framework, okay? The best could come out from this framework, the worst also. This is why we have to encourage. There is not, I think that the destruction in Syria of the society is not a fatality. It should not be regarded as such. The Syrian nation, which is a very old nation, by the way, has the internal resources to bring a contribution to get out from the crisis with the help of the international community. Now, the biggest responsibility is, it seems to me that it lies today at the level of the international community. When I speak of international community, I mean strictly the United States of America and also Russia, because Russia, whether we like it or not, and I hate it, has a special responsibility. Thanks a lot. I just wanted to share with you those remarks. Thank you very much. Really, me gusta mucho lo que nos ha dicho, embajador. Realmente ha sido una valoración muy precisa y exacta. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you. That was His Excellency, the Ambassador of Algeria, Mohammed Hanesh. Yes, please.
Okay. Hello, good morning. Allow me to speak in English if you don't mind. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Lara. For a couple of years, I was ambassador of Spain in Georgia. So I'm going to offer you a brief and cold, very cold introduction to the Russian politics in the zone. I'm not the ambassador of Russia, but I would like to give you a perspective from the north, which is, not very normal from what I see here. I see great specialists, my dear old friend, Pedro, and of course, my dear friend, Ambassador Answine. So the first thing I would like to tell you is that, this is Russia. Look at Russia like a big, big bear, but a very frail one. So you probably, if you've never been in Russia, you think that it's very powerful, very big, immense. Well, that is not the case. When it comes to warm waters, they have very, very few kilometers, very few miles of coast. So for them, every inch of warm water does count. So beginning in Abkhazia and ending in Tertus, if you think that they are going to leave any of this part of the coast, you are wrong, because it is vital for them. It is not just a dream, by Catherine the Great. It is vital. This, I would define this part of the world for them as the outer rim of the near abroad. all right? So get used to the idea that Russia is there to stay. It's not, an artificial fact of life. It's there to stay. It's going to be one of the actors of the zone. Definitely, Putin has very clear ideas on this. First, Russia is contrary to the principle of intervention in the internal affairs of the other countries. So it is going to defend this principle and is bound to arm Syria. It has done this and is going to continue to do this. Second, they are very much afraid of terrorism. If the rebels end up by being on the winning side, it's going to be very serious. Russia in the Caucasus, however it might look, is not very, very strong. His only body politic, which is absolutely in favor of them, is Armenia. Israel arms Azerbaijan, and when it comes to Georgia, well, this is a very delicate question because I am a diplomat on active duty, but Tamerlan Tsarnaev followed a seminar at the Tbilisi University, seminar organized by the Jamestown Foundation. It's proof. So the least they want is to see the rebels win the upper hand in Syria and end up in the Caucasus. In the Caucasus, for those of you who don't know, there is a war going on. Every day there are many casualties, so even there's little known. And finally, there is the protection of the Christians. Probably Syria is one of the last places where they live more or less in peace. At least according to my source in this is Mr. William Dalrymple from the Howley Mountain. According to him, the only place where Christians are still more or less protected is Syria. So they want to protect it. It comes as a surprise, but it is true. So, in my opinion, we are facing a new paradigm, and this paradigm, I am afraid, goes absolutely against, or it has, it has nothing to do with the old order. Not only with the order of, venerable order of the Treaty of Versailles, but even those of 49 and 56 and everything. It's a completely different story. A whole nightmare has opened for the West. If you remember in 1908, when all the conservatives attacked Bush for not invading Iraq, Bush and Scowcroft published a paper called, I think it was A New World, 98, saying that having to rule a hostile Iraq would be the worst possible thing to do for the West. Now, add to this Lebanon, add to this Syria. The only two body politics that survive in the West, in this part of the world right now, are Iran and Israel, with new actors there, which are Russia, Turkey, probably challenging Saudi Arabia in its protection of the Sunni Muslims, and of course Qatar playing a role which prudence does not allow me to comment. I'm sorry. So it's a completely different story. And now, abiding by the old tradition of the diplomats to try to be a bit smart, I wouldn't call Geneva II, but rather Suez II, because we have done nothing in this respect. It's again the United States and Russia that are going to decide what to do there. So again, France and England disappear from the picture. And just as a homage to Chatham House, is to put an end to my intervention, as a homage to Chatham House, I think the Earl of Wavell was absolutely right when he said, I don't know if we have fought a war to end all wars, but it seems that in Paris they have signed a peace to end all peaces. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would you like to comment on that, or shall we just get another question? Yes, sure, of course.
It is really a question, because I'm confused. We've heard that Syria should be left alone for the Syrians to decide. And we've heard that the ball is in the court of the international community, and the United States and Russia have to play an important role. So what is it? Do they have to interfere or not? Do we need to leave the lamb and the wolf together in the same enclosure and hope that they will reach a solution, or do we need to intervene on?
I'm going to answer to you in a very undiplomatic way, jubilado way, let's call it that way. Look, I think the international community, and especially the United States and Russia, have to intervene. But they have to intervene in the right sense, not by escalating the situation in Syria with the addition or allowing the addition of new elements of strife that affect problems that are not directly linked to the internal situation in Syria, but by isolating precisely the problem, helping by isolating the problem and telling, for instance, Israel, please, do not move the waters, or tell Saudi Arabia, please, do not allow Al-Qaeda to enter in the fight, as it has been entering the fight through Turkey. And telling Turkey, please, take it easy, mind your business, and not, this is what I intended when I said that they have to intervene, but have to intervene in the right way. And my personal feeling, I might be wrong, of course, and I would like to be wrong, is that the main international players in this issue are not responding to these desires. They are acting on their own interests, sometimes mean interests, sometimes very important national interests. In the case of the United States, they're simply following their policy concerning the Middle East and Israel. And that's all. I think when Obama went to Israel just a couple of months ago, he said it very clearly. The only thing he said is, we back to the bone Israel, point. He didn't say a thing about peace process or anything, nothing. Then came Kerry with his, they're trying to manage the situation, but that is reality. So I think that if they don't make an effort, really, to advance in the, let's say, Geneva paper way, in this framework, but in the meantime, taking care of not escalating situation, not sending more arms to the region, not playing with saying, okay, I'm sending patriots there so that in case that Syria is a problem, then the others can. This is the difficulty. And personally, I believe they could do at least much more and in a more reasonable way to help the Syrians find a solution. Thank you.
I've been asked by our president here to keep to the timing we have. We have a coffee outside waiting for us. I'll leave with one last brief comment to Salam, so we can and we can ask later on more questions during later sessions.
Thank you very much. Just quickly about Geneva II. I ask you if one of you know about what Geneva talk about. Even Kerry and Lavrov, they don't know, and it was a voluntary document, ambiguous document, to be interpreted in different way. Yes. First. Second, Mr. Ambassador, you said Russia are against the interference in the internal issues. The only superpower who interfere in Syria really is Russia. We have military fighter from Russia. We have officials from Russia. We have weapons who come every day from Russia, and they are the most important external actor who intervene inside Syria. The Russian, I agree with you, they have afraid from both things who emerged from the Arab Spring, or what we call the Arab Spring. It's the political Islam and it's the democracy, because Russia is the last country who we can qualify as democracy. Concerning the Christian in Syria, believe me that the regime was never the protector of the Christian, as he was never the protector of all the Syrian citizens. The Christian was, the percentage of Christian was in Syria in 1970, 15%. In 2010, before the revolution, it's become 1.6% of the Syrian population, the Christian in Syria. They left Syria under the Assad regime who protect them. It's, of course, they don't left Syria for only religious reason, for economic reason, also from family reason, many different reasons. And I think to end with Israel, if we look the debate, internal debate in Israel, we found that the majority of the decision maker in Israel want to keep Assad in place. You have three different schools in Israel. You have the school of the security body, you have the school of military body, and you have the school of political body. Only the military body said, we don't have any problem if Assad gone. The other said, the devil we know, it's better than the devil we don't know, and the regime in Syria, since 74, he keep our border in the north as the more stable and secure border in the history of Israel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Salam Kawakibi and Ambassador Pedro Lopez Aguirrebengoa. We'll have a 20-minute coffee break, and then we'll come back to regional repercussion, security and refugees. It's the next session. And please, all of you who had questions, write them down so you can ask them later on a proper debate afterwards. Bye. Thank you.